Alright, let's have a look here. Let's have a look at the wonderful results that I've got for my query. Is there a name for the kind of art style Disco Elysium has? No, it's not real. I'm begging you to stop saying that every portrait with expressive colours and brushwork is Disco Elysium style. How do you call the Disco Elysium art style? You don't call it anything. Disco Elysium, believe it or not, did not invent expressive brushwork and bright colours. You'll actually find that that was the modernists. Oh, this person's saying look at oil paintings and shit. Oh, they're actually doing my job for me. That's spoilers. So as you can tell, I'm annoyed about something, and it's kind of petty, to be honest. Because when people say Disco Elysium style, I do know what they're referring to. If you look at this kind of collage of portraits, you do get a sense that there is something cohesive about them. They have more similarities than they do differences. But referring to anything that kind of vaguely looks like this as Disco Elysium style annoys me for two reasons. The first reason is that there are pretty clearly a bunch of different styles here. So when you're saying Disco Elysium style, which one do you mean? Do you mean this one? The Cuno portrait has a kind of illustrative quality to it, and you've got these sort of flat, bold colors with really clear dividing lines between them, as opposed to, I mean, look at that. That's a completely different type of guy right there. Much more abstract. You've got these kind of floating brush strokes everywhere, and also you've got this area here which looks like bare canvas. It's not bare canvas because this is all digital, but because it's the same color as this bit of background, it gives an unfinished effect, which is in direct contrast to the very refined style of the Cuno portrait. These portraits were clearly made by a couple of different people over a long period of time. And in fact, when you read the art book, they say that is exactly what happened. They had a handful of artists working on them, and they got worked and reworked over the whole course of production, which I believe was about 5 years. The second reason that it annoys me is because it kind of implies that art is made in a vacuum, that art can just come out of nowhere, which speaks to me of a kind of lack of engagement with the broader context that art is happening within. This is something that matters to me a lot more now than it would previously because of the discourse around AI. Hey, this is editing surprisingly sincere here. I don't think I explained that at all. The idea I'm trying to get at here is Disco Elysium's art is not good because it's technically proficient, although it is. Disco Elysium's art is good because it is proficiently speaking a language, and that language is built by history and context. And if you can speak that language even a little bit, you're going to be able to tell when an image is just speaking gibberish. Also, I come across as a little bit obnoxious here, I think. I'm not actually mad. This is just a framing device so that I can show you some interesting art history stuff. Okay, that's all. Bye. So what I kind of want to do today is I want to take you through and have a look at the context that the Disco Elysium style exists within. It's going to make you immune to generative AI, basically. I'm not an expert either. This is some stuff that I've gathered together from reading the art book and investigating the influences that they cite there, investigating those influences on those influences, and just kind of tracing down the line of art history, one Google search at a time. So let's have a fucking bloody look. So, the art book, which is very good, by the way, I really enjoy. The art book cites a couple of different influences. We'll take them one at a time. I've got notes here, but no script. So I'm pretty nervous. I'm trying to get information across and I've got no script. I've got to rely on my brain, what's in here, which is a disaster. So one of the first people that they cite is Alex Kanevsky. That's these two paintings here are done by Alex Kanevsky. So let's take a look at Alex Kanevsky. This is a 2016 collection, which I know the creators have seen because they cite another 2016 work of his. As you can see, we've got this kind of almost glitchy effect going on here. And something that you'll notice between the works is that most of them like obscure the face in some way. This is the 2015 collection, which I think is also very relevant. This collection is called Unstable. And I would say, yeah, that's what it is. Looking at this, all of this looks pretty, I didn't notice this before, but this is a reclining Venus. You'll see there's a whole bunch of different sculptures and paintings here. I'm going to specify painting. Now look at that. Anyway, that's very interesting, but it's not relevant. So you get this effect where it looks like reality itself is kind of dissolving. There's something computery about it to me. It reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed and the way that you can kind of phase in and out of existence in those games because you're like in a video game within the video game. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, this is apparently a really big influence, and I think you can really see that in a portrait like, say, for instance, Idiot Doom Spiral, who is a character who you come to understand that he's got some kind of neurological problem where his memory is sort of scattered to the wind almost, and you can see the effect being achieved by this portrait of kind of scattering his brain to the wind. There's a kind of dissolving to it. So that's Alex Kanevsky. The next influence that they cite is, and I got so excited when I read this, Jenny Saville. Now, I know Jenny Saville for the 1992 work Propped, which is quite confronting. I think you'll agree. And that's furthered by the fact that it is bigger than life size. And so everything is kind of looming. Jenny Saville, you can obviously tell, is very interested in the body. There was something I read while I was doing research for this that was talking about, it said something like, Jenny Saville explores themes of womanhood and body expectations, and I thought, what a way to sort of simmer it down into the lowest common denominator, you know. Oh, it's about body positivity. Fuck off. You're doing Jenny Saville a disservice if you just kind of boil it down to it's about beauty standards. I think there's something a lot more visceral to it than that. We're just talking, we're just being friends right now. Now, in the art book, we can see that Rostov, who is one of the main artists, he's in front of a piece called Fulcrum, I believe. So we know that this particular piece is important to the work of the game. This makes me very, very aware that I am made of meat. And I think where you can see the influence of that the most is in the portraits of the skills, which are kind of body horror. Like, really, that's body horror is what it is. Like, let's have a bloody closer look at that. The way that flesh kind of melds together in some of these skills, multiple sort of bodies blending together, I'd say that's quite Jenny Saville to me. Next is Craig Mullins. Now, that's an interesting one. Apparently, Craig Mullins was one of the first digital artists to use traditional style in the digital format back in the early days of the Wacom tablet, you know what I mean? He's a concept artist and apparently a very formative concept artist. He made concept art look how it looks today. This is my favorite piece that I found by him. I think this is so lovely. And if you pay attention, you can see there's beautiful rendering, very, very clean rendering on the chief. But as you get kind of further away from the chief, you sort of lose these details and they go into just sort of broad shapes, broad strokes, broad brush strokes. This is the piece that they cite in the art book, that this is the example that they give, and you can see very visible brushstrokes. You know, this dress is made entirely out of brushstrokes. You can thank the modernists for giving us this kind of expressive, unrendered style And in fact, Craig Mullins actually cites John Singer Sargent as a major influence on him. And I found some very interesting pieces from John Singer Sargent. Have a look at this. Isn't that lovely? This is still physical media, but it looks quite a lot like what you might call today Disco Elysium style. If everything about this was the same, but you couldn't see the texture of the canvas underneath, you would, I think, quite freely call this Disco Elysium style. But it's not. It's John Singer Sargent, and it's from 1905. Now, this one was crazy interesting to me. Apparently, Rothko was an influence. The guy who does the, I could have done this kind of art that everyone makes fun of. I didn't understand Rothko until fairly recently when I was enjoying a beautiful sunset. And it occurred to me that when I'm enjoying a beautiful sunset, all I'm enjoying really is the stack of colours. And that was the moment when Rothko kind of twigged for me. And again, I went to art school, and art school did not teach me how to appreciate Rothko. I had to figure that out myself years later, looking at a sunset. Don't go to art school. Or go to art school, but make sure to drop out, because there's nothing worse than having an art degree. Now, Rothko is working within sort of a broader field of what we call colour fields, which is exactly as it sounds, it's fields of colour. This was part of the abstract expressionism movement, and digital art in the modern day has a lot to thank abstract expressionism for. Unfortunately, Jackson Pollock was also an abstract expressionist, and I hate Jackson Pollock. Fucking have a look at this. There's something so sploogey about that to me. And, you know, Jackson Pollock was a bit of a dickhead as well. And the whole thing just kind of turns me off. I don't like Jackson Pollock. I don't think he was doing anything particularly interesting. I think he was just splooging. But a good abstract expressionist who also did a lot of colour field work was Helen Frankenthaler. And I want you to have a look at this. Look what I found when I was, refreshing my memory on abstract expressionism. Have a look at the colours in this colour field. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Then have a look at old mate down here. Have a look at the colours in that colour field right there. Even like to the degree that there's a little bit of blue in there. It's actually similar enough that it does make me wonder if they had actually looked at this Helen Frankenthaler colour field. But you can see, I think, how colour fields are actually a pretty important part of the construction of these portraits. Let's look at the racist lorry driver, for instance. What's behind him? That could be a Rothko, mate. That's a colour field and a half. I think I've found, honestly, what you might call the earliest example of Disco Elysium style, which is The Green Stripe by Matisse. And it's from an era where Matisse and some other guy called Duran were busy inventing fauvism, which is characterized by very bright colors and expressive brushwork, which that sounds pretty familiar. So when you say Disco Elysium style, what do you mean? Having had my little nerd moment about art, the reason that I'm not worried about AI is because it cannot do what we've just done. It cannot go through the art historical legacy of a piece of work and pull out the influences that it's pulled from, why it's pulled from those influences, the cultural context that that influence came from. An artist is typically, I'm going to just go ahead and say it, doing a lot more than just laying down paint. They are engaging with an entire history of art context. AI does not have any of this information. It knows what images look like, but it doesn't know why they look like that. If I can leave you with any message today, it would be stay curious and ask questions and read more, and then AI won't be able to replace you. because it can't do any of those things. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know. If it sucked, probably don't say anything. I think it would hurt my feelings, probably. So probably don't say anything if it sucked, and if it was good, definitely tell me, because that will make me feel good. I'll like that. Bye. I tend to think of these portraits as kind of representing Harry Dubois' POV, the way that Harry understands the character. And to me, this portrait says, "There but for the grace of God, go I." It's gorgeous.